And now we have Lianna Newman. So as I mentioned, Lianna is a full stack developer in our solutions department. And I'm just going to quickly bring them a little bit more into solutions. So solutions can be seen as the business venture arm at Consensus. So we partner with various companies, government organizations, et cetera, to identify problems and work together to build blockchain solutions. So all those big name companies that need a blockchain solution, Lianna is a part of that department that works with them. And Lianna will be speaking on making the career switch to tech. Thanks, Lianna.
Thanks, Danielle. Hi. What's up? So just out of curiosity, how many folks in the room are devs? Cool. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Of devs, how many of you went through a boot camp? I don't know what your hand should have done if you went through the boot camp. I guess keep your hand up if you went through a boot camp. Perfect. Okay, thank you, devs. Put your hands down. Okay, how many of you are not devs but are considering becoming developers? Okay, I'll take it, I'll take it. And how many of you who are considering, really just you, how many are considering the bootcamp route? Okay, cool, awesome. So really this talk is for you. Everyone else just gets to hear my life story. Just kidding. But yeah, no, I am gonna talk to you just a little bit about how I got to where I am today, since my path was not the traditional go to computer science major kind of thing. How many Harry Potter fans do we have in the room? Oh, yes! Yes! Sweet. Cool. Oh, sorry. I meant to move that. Okay, yes. Cool. All right. So, for the Harry Potter fans in the room, you'll get my reference. For everyone else, work on your life. Okay, so... It's fine. So the reason I bring up Harry Potter is because when I first, actually I think it was like my second job out of my coding boot camp, someone told me that developing software engineering is the closest that us humans, muggles, but you know, I consider myself a wizard, so not me, but it's the closest that we can get to magic. And I was one of the OG Harry Potter fans before it became like a big thing. And so like thinking, I promise you, this is all gonna make sense later for the people who are like, what is going on? So the thing is though, like if someone had told me this when I was like 11 and like geeking out on Harry Potter, I probably would have gone down the traditional route. But because I didn't have someone or a high school that had programs in it, I didn't. But that's okay. So I'm a Hufflepuff. How many Hufflepuffs do we have in the room? Okay, all right. Gryffindors? Okay. Ravenclaw? Wait, we saw another Hufflepuff over here? Oh, Gryffindor, okay. All right. Ravenclaw? Okay, all right. And then that means everyone else is a Slytherin, is that correct? Or doesn't know their house and now is reconsidering whether or not they're actually a Harry Potter fan, which you should. Okay, perfect, great, thank you. All right, perfect. So, so I grew up in a super small town in Pennsylvania. It was called Stroudsburg, or the Poconos, as a lot of people know it. So there wasn't really much going on. My neighbors were deer and bears. I went to a predominantly white high school. I was always the only person in my honors class, yada, yada, yada. So I decided after that to go to college, and I decided to do film. Right? Yes, cool. So my college, my high school didn't have a film program, so that meant that in order to get into the film program, I was competing against students who had already had like film knowledge, and so I didn't get into the film. I got into media studies, which meant instead of actually making films, I got to learn how other people made them and how they affected society, which is cool, and a degree that I'm totally using right now. Cool. So, yep, media studies instead of film. That's cool. So my life after college. So while I was going to college, I had been working in a daycare. When I graduated, they were like, you can stay here until you find a job. And I was like, awesome, I'm gonna be a filmmaker. And right now I'm in like Queens, New York, working in a daycare center. this is my life right now. This is how I was. It was very sad. And so that was actually a really dark time because I didn't really see like a clear path to something better. So after about a year at the daycare, I quit my job and decided to just volunteer at a bunch of different places. I did social media. I worked for a cab company. I did a lot of really weird, odd jobs. Started my own pet sitting business. And then I got a job at Apple. Bitmoji doesn't have anything with Apple on it, so I'm eating an apple. So I worked at Apple for about a year and 8 months. It was a really rewarding job. I loved teaching people how to use technology. I'm always a big fan of it, and so it was great to be in that space. About a year in, I got promoted to mentor, and that's when I started thinking, wow, like this is so great. I get to work with my coworkers and help them figure out what they want to do with their lives. I should go into HR. I should not have gone into HR. So I went into HR. I left Apple, decided to go work for another company that I'm not going to name because it was a really terrible experience. And I was there initially thinking I was going to like help people. I was going to change things. But really, they didn't want that. So I was like, okay, cool. So what can I do to make myself happy in this job that I'm going to be in for 3 years and 4 months, which I didn't know at the time? And the answer was to do tech things. So I did that. We were using spreadsheets when we should have been using like Google Forms. We were using spreadsheets when we should have been using LastPass, and it was like all these little things where I'm like, why are we doing these? And it was just because people didn't know. They're like, well, we don't know the different technologies out there, so if you know how to do it, then do it. And I was like, great. And then at some point during that time, I won tickets to the World Makers Fair. If you've never been to it, highly recommend. It's in New York and in the SF, so check it out. And through that, some person was there recruiting, and they were like, hey, we have a meetup group, and you look like a non-cis white male. And I'm like, why, yes, I am. And so I joined their group, went to a couple of meetings. It was fantastic. And that's when I started to hear about this little buzzword. And the buzzword was boot camps. And I was like, what's a boot camp? They're like, well, basically in like 17 weeks, you don't have to go back to college, but you will come out and have a degree in software engineering. And I was like, that sounds dope. Let's do it. It was really hard, really, really hard. I quit my job. I left the person I was dating. I moved back home. My mom was super happy about that. And I went through it. I went through the camp. I cried a lot. I'm going to be real honest about that. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I'm tech savvy, but like this was like another level. And then I graduated. And it took me 8 months before I found another job, partially being the way that I look, and then also just like I was trying to get out of New York, which was a little bit harder to convince people to hire someone newly out of a boot camp with absolutely no experience. But lo and behold, I got my first job out in DC, and thank you. And I was doing an internship at this place called Contactually. It's a little startup, and it's pretty cool. I was one of 3 people of color, and all the people of color were either interns or junior devs. I was an intern, and so was the other intern. But I befriended the other junior dev. When the internship was over, they didn't have any openings, so I went and decided to go teach at a different boot camp. And so, whoops. Life after, there we go. And so I got to teach at a boot camp in Boston, which was pretty cool. But after a month of starting there, they fired all their non-technical staff, and I was like, wait, what? And then they're like, no, don't worry. And then 2 months there, they're like, by the way, you don't have a job in like a month and a half? And I was like, great. So I left there, decided I was gonna go back to DC, was not a fan of Boston. Sorry for people who are from Boston. Your city sucks. Sorry. Just saying, it was not very welcoming is all I'm saying, okay? Sorry, I'm sorry. So I went back to DC, and I started posting everywhere, just being like, hey, boot camp ran out of money, I have no job, I need a job. And luckily, one of the non-technical staff people who had been let go had actually started working at Consensus. And so they were like, hey, I remember you from the boot camp, like, you were a pretty cool teacher, you should come work here. And I was like, okay, cool, what do you do? And he's like, blockchain. I was like, what? And he's just like, blockchain. Bitcoin? I was like, Bitcoin, what? And so I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, let's do that. That works, sure. So I did a lot of research, actually interviewed with Robbie. So thank you, Robbie. And yeah, and then I got in here. I started in January of this year. It's been a pretty wild ride, and I'm loving it. I don't remember what I had on the slide. So, okay, no, that was it. Yes, okay, cool. And then, yeah, that's me. So thank you.